Behind me right here is the oldest airport in the entire world. No, it's not London Heathrow. No, it's not JFK or any of those airports you've heard of. It's a small airport in a college town near Washington, D.C. Here's the story. So early 1900s, airplanes were becoming all the rage after the Wright brothers invented them. The government needed somewhere for the Wright brothers to test and to train the Army pilots who were going to pilot the planes. They went up in a balloon and they saw this field open and they were like, why not here? It's kind of a whole area, it's being redeveloped, but this has been here for a while. So they chose this area a while ago. I think it was a pretty good choice. There's a rail line right next to here, both commuter and metro. You can get here pretty easily. It's also near a college, so young people have the opportunity to see the history and that kind of stuff. It's also 8 miles from DC. That's where the military is headquartered. So the fact that they chose this area so close to DC to do the first military testing of the airplane, pretty good choice in my opinion. My, of course, uneducated, just random dude opinion. The weather is good enough. There's never really crazy winds around here. Hopefully I can get this before it starts storming. So in 1903, the Wright brothers invented the airplane, the first human-powered flight. Over the next 10 years, they made some changes to their plane, made it a bit better. They also showed it off around the country, and then even over in Europe. Once they returned to the United States, they returned to Fort Myer, which is right now where the Pentagon is, so pretty close to College Park, Maryland. So, as I have said, the government wanted to train Army pilots to pilot the new government official military aircraft. That is why they chose College Station and what is now the College Park Airport. And it is starting to rain, so I gotta go inside. Anyway, they chose the area, and then they had to choose 2 or 3 pilots that the Wright brothers were actually going to physically train inside the aircraft, because this was going to be a big deal. They wanted to make sure that people were respectable. So this is a recreation of the airplane hangar and crew quarters of when this place started. It started as just a small little building next to the field which was to become College Park Airport. Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright were both instrumental in creating the first airplane and also creating this place. Basically, after they made their first plane and did their stuff by themselves, the government wanted the money, they wanted the airplane, they wanted the technology. So they basically gave the Wright brothers money and they gave them this area, College Park Airport, to start training government, Army people to start being pilots. This is before anything like that existed. So this is basically where the Air Force, it was Army at the time, but where the Air Force basically, like, this is where it was born. Beds were much smaller back then. These are stove burners like we have on our stoves. They look a lot different now, don't they? Also, creaking like real wood. That's, at least it's realistic, right? And yeah, this was still when planes were in their absolute infancy, so they had to do all the repairs themselves. They had to do all that kind of stuff. This was before cars were really a thing. Cars were also in their infancy, so bikes were common to get around. There also was the streetcar system in DC at the time. But yeah, this is pretty cool. A little recreation of what it was kind of like back then. So behind me here is the second version of the Wright's plane. This is the Model B. This one started flying in 1911, 2 years after they first started. In 1911, the government purchased more planes, the Wrights built them, and this was the one that they got. It was the first plane that they tried to drop bombs in and like put a bomb scope on it. And it was also the first plane with a true elevator to make the plane go up and down, because the first one had a janky system. Even though these days bicycles and airplanes might as well be on the opposite spectrums of transportation, back when the first planes were being made, bikes were actually very common, and the Wright brothers were actually bike makers of bikes before they started with the airplane. So the first airplane actually had a bike chain. So basically, to operate the propellers, the things that spin to make the plane go, a bike chain would be put in there. You'd have to start the propeller manually, but once the chain started moving, it would start the motor, and then the motor would turn the propellers. So that's pretty cool. Also, if you you can see the tires, also definitely bike tires. And boom, there is the runway. Unfortunately, planes don't take off and land here very often. I checked flight radar and there was nothing for today. But if it was a bit more busy airport, this would be a very nice place to do plane spotting. There's also a little area down there for kids. you know, keep it simple. Today it's pretty hot, but I'm sure in like the fall it would actually be pretty nice. And do you see that big compass thing? So basically before GPS, before waypoints, before all that kind of stuff, those things were on the ground all across the nation. Sorry, kind of winded. And plane pilots would look at them to make sure they were going the correct direction. It's pretty crazy how far we've come in the last 100 years. Many aviation firsts here happened at this aerodrome, an old term for airport. 1911 civilian flights started taking off here with privately built and operated planes. And also here in 1918, I believe, they had the first airmail in the world. It went from here to DC, or from DC to Philadelphia to New York. And being able to send, you know, official messages and stuff like that was a big deal.
Several days.
So College Park Airport covers about 70 acres of land, and it only has one runway. The runway is made of asphalt, and it's 2,600 by 60 feet. That's this in meters for my European friends. A road near the airport is named after Corporal Frank Scott, who was the first enlisted military personnel in the United States to die in an aviation-related incident. That happened at the College Park Airport in the year 1912. The easiest way to get to the airport from DC is by the Metro. The green or yellow lines will take you straight north to College Park Station. You can also get there with the MARC train, which is a commuter train that goes in the mornings and the afternoons. And of course, you can drive there, and there is a modest-sized parking lot that should be fine for any car or truck that you might have. There are also multiple bus lines that end at the College Park Station, and that is about a 10-minute walk from the airport. Thank you for getting to the end of this video. If you liked it, consider hitting the subscribe button and doing all the other things. Social media is in the description, all that jazz. And I will catch you in the next one.